Okay, welcome back to Violent Money TV. Today, I am joined by Alish Smith, who put on one of the performances of the night at Cage Warriors 177 Unplugged. Now, before we get into the actual performance, I spoke to Cage Warriors commentator Brad Wharton for a video that we put out on this very channel, kind of previewing the cards.
Mhm.
And he told me in kind of, I suppose, a Cliff Notes version, the story of how this fight got put together, because it was a pretty unique set of circumstances of how this one ended up coming together. So, can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I was meant to be fighting on a different promotion, like just a regional card, and I had two girls pull out on me. Um, and then so I spoke to my manager. I think he was in contact with Cage Warriors anyway, trying to organize some stuff. But my mum is actually very good friends with Ricky Wright, and he's obviously been on worked with Cage Warriors and everything before, and he's good friends with Brad. And I think he spoke to must have been Ian just about the matchup happening because I think obviously they wanted to get Rhi Rhi to fight. I needed a fight, good fight matchup there and everything. So he gave me Ian's details. I sent them to my manager, and then basically the fight got put together, which was pretty exciting.
So, when you said you were set to fight originally on a different promotion, how long
Mm-hmm.
before this fight would that have been if that had come together?
I think I was meant to fight on the 7th of September. So I think what 2 weeks beforehand. So I was already in a camp and everything. So it all worked out pretty well.
This is something that Brad mentioned as well when he was talking about it, like how difficult it is for female fighters, especially at this level, because a lot of the young fighters and prospects or people that don't have tons of experience will tend to gravitate towards the same gyms, which means you're either teammates with someone that you could potentially fight or potentially, everyone knows each other almost because there
Yeah.
isn't a very big talent pool. Has that been an issue for you? Because following Rhi Rhi's career has been constantly like that, constant changes of opponents and
Yeah.
difficulties finding them.
I think definitely at this weight class as well, like because I fight in obviously strawweights, a bit of the lower one and atom weight as well. Like a lot of girls tend to go to, flyweight or bantamweight. So trying to find girls that actually are in strawweight. I haven't offered a lot of fights at bantam and flyweight, but I walk around sort of at flyweight. So it's well around that sort of area. So it's like all the girls cutting down to it are just too big. So, I've said yes to a lot of fights that I probably shouldn't have just for that reason, like to get fights. And like you said, trying to find training partners is always hard because you want to train with the girls that are at your level, but also you don't want to get rid of potential opponents. It's always going to be hard fighting a friend if you do make friends with them. So I've had very similar, so my last fight was in March, and before that, I literally had like almost a year and a half off because the same reason. Like I had fights lined up, people pull out, change of opponents all the time. So it was just, yeah, it was good to have this fight, like get on a bit of a run of fights would be good.
Yeah, I mean, as Brad had said in the preview that we did, like it worked out perfectly in that both you and Rhi Rhi have had problems getting opponents. And so it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, you know that both of you are not gonna turn down this fight and both of you are going to make it because you've had so many opponents not do the same. It
Mm-hmm.
ended up being a great watch for the 2 rounds it lasted before you got the finish. I knew going in that it was going to be a striking match, which I think is why we picked it out as one to talk about with Brad before we did the preview. But when you were approaching that matchup, I mean, especially with Rhi Rhi coming off of that knockout that she got on her debut, was there ever a game plan to switch it up at all, or were you always going to try and test her striking, which is also her best skill set?
Yeah, I think like because I am like naturally a striker, I always want to go in there and strike, and obviously it starts standing, so that's kind of how it goes. But I think game plan was always just to strike, but it was kind of more like use my striking to then set up other stuff. So like get her to respect my striking, and then maybe go for takedowns or do that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm always like pro striking, so definitely that was my game plan.
I think they said on the commentary about how when the first round ended, it was like, well, I can't believe that round has already gone because there was no feeling out process in
Yeah.
this fight at all. It started straight out the gate, which again, kind of to be expected from Rhi
Yeah.
Rhi's last performance. And like they said, that first round just seemed to fly by because it like started and then it was just seemingly like constant exchanges until the end of the first round.
Yeah, like you said, there wasn't really much of a feeling out process. It was just kind of just straight into it. Yeah.
What kind of is the steps from here, do you think, in terms of finding another fight? Is competing on Cage Warriors another thing that is potentially in the works for you?
I definitely like to. I did speak to Ian briefly, and obviously because it's near the end of the year, I don't think there's a lot of space on the cards. Obviously, because you've got to get them booked in quite early and everything. If something falls through, he did say that maybe be able to get me on there, so that would be good. But just got to speak to my manager like this week and just organize and discuss like what's next. Like I want to get in back into the cage as soon as I can. Like I said, I had so much time off before this year. I just want to get the ball rolling, and like I'm not injured, like I'm still fit, like I'm healthy and everything, so I can literally just get straight back into a camp. But kind of like whatever is there, like if even one of the bigger promotions like reach out, or even if there's something in Europe, or if I have to travel, I don't mind. So yeah, just want to get back in as soon as possible, really.
Does it feel like that activity is a big part in because your career is interesting in that you're on a 3 fight win streak now, and so
Mm-hmm.
again that performance was fantastic, and I think that not that I don't think MMA fans do this anyway, but your record doesn't reflect your current skill level because the fact of the matter is, regard if you take the 2 losses away at the start, you're on a 3 fight winning streak, and so
Mm-hmm.
the current form maybe doesn't reflect in the record. Which again, I don't think MMA fans tend to do that. I think MMA fans know at this point that that doesn't really mean a whole lot in terms of where a fighter is currently at. But is staying active a big part of that? Do you think?
I think definitely because obviously with MMA, like with I guess boxing and Muay Thai, you can kind of get into the ring like in like every month you can kind of focus MMA. It's a little bit different. Like obviously depending on how the fight goes, you can get in like sooner or later sort of thing. But there's so much more to the training. Like your opponents have always got a different style. Like it's not just the striking, grappling, all that more time and helps just because you don't want that ring rust kind of thing, or like all the nerves to get you to if you're out for too long. I think with the records and stuff as well, like MMA, I guess people are looking at it a little bit different now, but I think it kind of means more if you lose like in MMA, like it seems to be more of a thing that's looked at. Whereas like Muay Thai, they kind of look over the losses, whereas MMA, it's kind of they look at the losses first, and like you said, they look at that and they go, oh, she's winning now, but she's had 2 losses kind of thing. But like you said, it doesn't really reflect like what the fighter is like.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit of like a middle ground between boxing and other striking sports in that sense. In that
Mm-hmm.
MMA, I feel like yeah, it maybe a loss isn't as important as it is in boxing, but like you said, if you look at, I mean, literally some of the greatest Muay Thai fighters and
Mm.
kickboxers, they've got tons of losses, and it's not a big thing because of how frequently they fight. I mean, even in kickboxing, which I would say
Yeah,
they don't fight as often as Muay Thai, and even then, you look at like some of the best kickboxers of all time, and they've got a fair few losses on their record. But yeah, I guess it's the because you can fight a lot more frequently,
yeah,
it's not as important because you just put it behind you and move on to the next one. And it's like, oh, well, I'll fight again in a month and no one will remember that last loss.
yeah. You're just moving forward so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
wonder if MMA will reach that. I guess because of the time frames, it just isn't possible. People are going to remember, especially, if you're fighting at a high level and maybe fighting twice a year, potentially, like people are going to remember
Mm.
the last loss. Like, is that I feel like so
Yeah.
many fighters have spoken about this, but I guess that's one of the more frustrating parts of MMA is that, unlike a lot of other sports, after a defeat, you can't just go straight back in there and kind of correct mistakes.
Yeah, you've got to go back and like sort of change a lot of stuff that you're doing. And like you said, because there is so many more elements to it, like you can lose in so many more ways than just striking, or even jiu-jitsu matches just grappling. So there's so much more that can happen. You've got to be so much more prepared for everything. So hopefully like it does, like you said, it's always going to be weird because of the time frames, but hopefully it does like start to change a bit. And I think it is now anyway, like people are starting to see losses not as much of a big deal. But like you said, once you get up to the height, it does become a bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like you said, maybe we'll see that change over years because I feel like it has changed a little bit at least over the last like decade or so. But we will see. Either way, I'm excited to see what is
Yeah.
next for you. I hope that it's on Cage Warriors, but regardless of whatever it is, excited to see it. So I appreciate your time and congrats on the win.